Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 3 is here for NFL DFS on FanDuel, and I'm going to give you guys a first look lineup. Now, if you watch the other content on this channel, you know that Mondays I do a first look lineup on DraftKings that is more based around building a cash game lineup. You also know that I do a review video, a recap of the previous week. That video has now moved to my second channel. That's where it's going to live for the rest of the season. Thank those of you who have already taken the time to go over to that second channel, drop a subscribe, ring the notifications bell, and watch that video. That is where it is. I did a recap video for week 2. It is on my second channel. There will be a card up here that you can click. There will be a link down below in the pinned comment that you can click. Very easy to find it. I have not abandoned that video. It is still there. I have to do this call to action again because people still in the replies in the last video were like, where's the recap video? That's where it is. This video, however, is going to take a look at building a tournament lineup. Now, some people may not understand, why is a tournament lineup different from a cash game lineup? What are the things that I do differently in a tournament lineup versus a cash game lineup? In a cash game lineup, I am only looking for volume and price. Players that have the best floor of scoring for based on the volume that they get, and I'm extremely price sensitive in my cash game builds. In tournament builds, I'm less concerned with the floor. I'm more concerned with ceiling, and I'm more concerned with correlating my players and my plays. So the method that we're going to use in building these tournament lineups every single week on this FanDuel First Look is to stack a quarterback with at least one of the players, offensive players on his team. We're going to bring it back with one of the players that they're playing against, be it a running back, wide receiver, or tight end. And then we're going to look into a secondary stack, meaning 2 players on opposing teams, hopefully from high scoring games or high volume situations for them, so that if that game shoots out or they have just a high accelerated pace or anything for that game, we get the goodness from that secondary stack and the primary stack and bring back player that we have. So what we're going to do with that is, the philosophy is, you have 9 roster spots to fill out. If I'm filling out 5 of those roster spots with 2 things, it's way easier to be right about 2 things than it is about 5 things. So, and then we're going to fill out the lineup with the rest of the players. I know that people want to look at guys that have a low possible percentage that they're going to carry with them in tournaments on the weekend. I typically don't really focus as much on that in terms of the individual players. I look at my entire lineups cumulative percentage that they're going to be in a tournament. I like to stay under 140% for that entire lineup. And what that means is I don't need to fade somebody simply because they're going to have a 30% number next to them on Sunday. I'm going to get my differentiation with the stacks, the bringbacks, and the secondary stacks that I play with. And you'll notice that if you kind of add up the prospective percent that those players are going to be on whatever side it is that you like to look at, it's going to hold down the number cumulative of that entire lineup. So let's get right to it. If you guys are new to the channel, drop a subscribe, drop a like on the video, make sure you ring the notifications bell, leave a reply to this video, click something before you leave. Just do it. It helps. And it costs you nothing. Thank you. Going over here to the video, right here to FanDuel, we got a bunch of different quarterbacks. What we want to focus on is finding quarterbacks who are playing in a faster pace environment, right? So teams that play at a neutral pace, but are playing against teams that are playing faster than them, they're going to be playing up in pace that week. So they'll typically get more snaps. They'll take more attempts. They'll get more opportunities to score. Some teams and players already play at an extremely fast pace. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys are right now playing at the fastest pace in the league. They're a race car right now, right? So we want to use Dak Prescott in lineups, and everybody's going to want to use Dak Prescott and stacking this Cowboys team. This is going to be an every week theme. And so as a result, I'm not going to stack this game because I could literally just make this video, hey, who are the Cowboys playing? We're going to stack that game in this video every week. So Dak Prescott is somebody that I'm going to use in a lot of stacks this week. I'm also going to use Russ Wilson in a lot of stacks this week. And the reason that both of these guys are good for stacking on any given week, but especially this week, they have a very condensed amount of targets or people in their target tree, let's say. Russ is going to throw the ball the majority of the time to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and then he's going to sprinkle in other guys. But Al, he threw touchdowns to 5 different players last week. Yes, I know he did. Yes, see, I'm aware. I watch the games. I also know that both of those pass catchers are going to get over 25% of Russ Wilson's targets by the end of the year. I also know that both of them were in the top 10, if not the top 5 in terms of end zone targets last year. So yes, on a 1-week sample, Russ Wilson can certainly spread it around, but on the whole, if we take a look at the entire season, he is clearly going to focus on those two guys, which makes him extremely stackable in those situations. Dak Prescott, same sort of thing. There are 4 pass catchers not counting the running backs from Amari Cooper, who we usually focus on at home, but you can play him on the road as well. Secondarily, CeeDee Lamb. You can even focus on Schultz, who I was wrong about Schultz, guys. I didn't think he was going to be as involved as he was last week. He was certainly involved with the amount of targets that he got, especially the end zone targets as well. It's just the tight end in this offense is going to do good. I apologize for missing on that one. Also, the running backs get targets too. So Dak Prescott, when you play a bunch of stacks, you're going to have different people that you're going to stack him with. I'm probably going to stack with 2 of his pass catchers when I play a Dak Prescott lineup. I'm going to bring it back with 1 guy on Seattle. The next game that I did want to focus on, and there's a lot of really good games, this is going to be a fun slate this weekend, is Kyler Murray, who's been absolutely bonkers. Now, here's the thing. Volume doesn't necessarily equate, and what I mean by volume with a quarterback is pass attempts, doesn't necessarily equate to fantasy scoring. Efficiency is what equates to fantasy scoring. But when you have a quarterback who runs it 8 times in 1 week and 13 times in another and makes every defensive player that's chasing him around look 10 miles an hour slower than he's moving, the upside is going to be outstanding. And the floor is going to be outstanding. So the floor comes from his rushing yards. The upside comes from his rushing touchdowns. You can count on the rushing yards from Kyler Murray every single week. Let's say 45 plus yards is probably where he's going to sit most weeks, not unlike Lamar Jackson last year with his rushing yards. The rushing touchdowns aren't going to be as sticky. He's not going to run the ball in 1.5 times a week, just like Cam Newton isn't going to run it in 2 times every week. Although they are utilizing Cam Newton a little bit differently in New England than they're utilizing Kyler Murray. I think 5 of the 8 goal to go carries for the Patriots have been handled by Cam Newton through 2 weeks, which is an absurd number, and I don't see that kind of slowing down. So maybe Cam is going to break the rushing touchdown record. I don't think Kyler Murray will, but I think his rushing yards are very sticky. That gives him a really good floor. He's also throwing it 40 times, and he's been pretty efficient. 230, 286 yards. He's got a great cast of receivers. The venerable one, Larry Fitzgerald. Kirk is the guy that he's taking deep shots with and not getting a ton of volume yet, at least not through 2 weeks. And they're just peppering Nook Hopkins with targets close to the line. Nook's price has gone up, and they're playing in what is the second highest totaled game on the week. There's a lot of good games on this slate, right? So, good games to watch would be like Buffalo and the Rams. I'm probably not going to stack up this game too much. Where's the other game we talked about was Dallas. Great game here. I think that a really good offensive environment is going to be this Houston and Pittsburgh game. I'm going to get a lot of shares of Pittsburgh. I really want to have a lot of shares of Watson. People are going to look at them and say, well, they're 0-2. But has any team seen a tougher start? They faced Kansas City, then they went home and played Baltimore, and now they've got Pittsburgh's defense to deal with. But Pittsburgh's defense, as good as it is, has still been giving up points the last couple of weeks and fantasy points on top of that. So Deshaun Watson and all of his guys are in play for me here, as are Ben Roethlisberger and all of his guys. We're going to stack that game up this week as well in our tournament allocations. If you're playing 3 max, 20 max, I suggest that you do too. But the guy that we're going to build this lineup around, and you could build around Stafford in this game if you want to also. Detroit and Arizona is the one that we're going to focus on here because I didn't want to be obvious with Dallas and Seattle. I'm going with Kyler Murray. Stafford's $1,100 cheaper. If you want to go with him playing up in pace at $1,100 cheaper because you feel like you need to save $1,100 so you can get that one other guy that you want in a lineup, fine. I'm surely going to have Stafford stacks, but I want to show you something that we can kind of do this week, and it's a little bit silly. So 1, we're going with Kyler Murray. I want to pair him with let's say, his most voluminous wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins against Detroit, whose defensive backs have not been doing exceptionally well. We know that the volume should be there. I said that it was not going to be a 16 target every week sort of thing, but 8 through 12 is certainly on the table, and they're easily convertible catches. How many times did you watch DeAndre Hopkins catch the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage this week? So they're just getting the ball in his hands, getting blockers in front of him, and then they're running Kirk as the deep guy. We watched Kingsbury in college do the same sort of thing when he was at Tech, where he would run a screen on one side and he'd run a deep route on the other side, and the quarterback has the option. If the defense does this, then you throw to the short option. If the defense does that, then you take the shot over the top, because they can't necessarily defend both things at the same time. So left side is one option, right side is the other, and he's just choosing DeAndre Hopkins 25 times in the first 2 weeks. I am definitely going to stack Hopkins with Kyler Murray. We need to bring it back with somebody. And to me, that means TJ Hawkinson. I don't know if Galladay is going to be back yet. Hawkinson has disappointed through the first couple of weeks, at least in terms of his market share of targets. It's not high enough, but he's been solid. He's not going to kill us at his price. He does have touchdown upside. He is a tremendous football player. He is at tight end, which Arizona has struggled with last year, and was the team that Hawkinson tore up 1 season ago in week 1 when everybody thought that he looked like an absolute world beater. I'm not going with, Arizona is going to give up as many touchdowns to tight ends as they did before, but we just watched last week when LT3 got 9 more targets against them. So they are still an area, or still is an area where teams are going to pick on Arizona by funneling targets towards their tight end, and Haskins is nowhere close to the same stratosphere as Matthew Stafford is in terms of quarterback efficiency. So if Hawkinson gets 7, 8, or 9 targets this week, which could be a thing that happens, and if we're building a tournament lineup, I'm not saying it has to happen. I just need to know that it could reasonably happen, especially in an up-paced situation, right? I'm less concerned with floor with this lineup. I'm more concerned with capturing all the ceiling. Hawkinson is a candidate for tournaments at 5,400. I'm also going to put Kenyon Drake into this lineup, but I'm going to put him in at flex because they're playing later. He catches enough balls to be viable. He has not gotten targeted as much as I thought that he would early this season, but his volume has been good enough, and I think that those targets are going to increase as the weeks go along. He is certainly not the type of running back that you only want to throw it to 2 times a game. And his price is absurd right now for somebody getting 18 and 22 targets or touches in the first 2 games at 6,500 on FanDuel. This is kind of the thing that I was talking about. The pricing on FanDuel is, let's just say, squishy. It's not all that restrictive at all. Okay? We can look at running backs and say, okay, Christian McCaffrey's out. We're not rostering him. Easy decision. You could go with Ezekiel Elliott playing at Seattle, but I would rather focus on players in the passing game if I'm going to go with players here for my core tournament lineups. I do want to have shares of this game when it comes down to filling out this lineup. This is where my secondary stack is going to come from. I'm going to target the 2 highest scoring games to build a tournament lineup here. Dalvin Cook has not gotten the volume that I want to get, or I need to get from him through 2 weeks, with 16 touches and 14 touches, and yet still costing 8,600. I think we can do better, and I'm going to show you where. Josh Jacobs' volume has been outstanding, but short week, traveling across the country, playing in New England, underdog, on the road, nothing more than a tournament play here. And the fact that he's more expensive than Derrick Henry, and Minnesota has just been kind of gashed on the road 2 straight weeks by opposing running backs. Or sorry, they were not on the road. They've been gashed 2 times in 2 weeks by opposing running backs. Even though Derrick Henry is on the road in this game, he's still going to be a 25 touch guy pretty much every single week, with 20 as a minimum. 8.4 points was his absolute floor. 8,200 is still too cheap here. And then we've got guys, I'm just going to plug Derrick Henry in this line. Again, it's ridiculous. I could focus completely on home running backs that are favored in this lineup and do it for super cheap. Wait till we get there. Chris Carson, if you want shares of him, we've seen way more usage from him out of the passing game, but they haven't really grinded it out on the ground with him. This could be the week that happens. you're going to want to get involved. 3 touchdown passes so far for Chris Carson, which is somewhat out of the ordinary for him. But Russ has just been absolutely on fire. Austin Eckler is way more of a DraftKings play for me than a FanDuel play. With him not getting the goal line work and Kelly being the one that's been getting the goal line work, I would rather play him in a full PPR setting as opposed to a half PPR setting. I will have some shares of Austin Eckler this week. I'm not saying to fade him on FanDuel, that's for sure. I'm just more excited to play him on DraftKings than FanDuel. The matchup with Carolina is something we're going to attack with running backs literally every single week. Miles Sanders, 7,400. That's a fair price, I think, although I think it's a little bit too cheap. Cincinnati's been gashed by running backs each of the first couple of weeks. In his first game back, he saw 7 targets and 20 rush attempts. The touchdown, that can come and go any week, but Cincinnati is a team that we do want to look at running backs against. Houston has given up a ton of yards to opposing running backs, and tales of James Conner's demise were greatly exaggerated as he had a fantastic game in week 2 against Denver with 16 carries for 106. He is going to get all of the inside the 5 touches for on the ground for this Steelers team. He is the goal line back, and 4 targets in week 1 before he got hurt, 2 targets in week 2. I really like that Steelers offense in total this week. You can play them in parts or you can stack them up. Joe Mixon against Philly, I'm probably not going there. David Johnson, probably not going there. But this price is absurd. This is like crazy Andes right here. 6,700 for Jonathan Taylor coming off of a 28-touch game. Massive favorite at home, getting all of the inside the 5 touches and carries. He is their goal line back. He looked like an absolute beast. I'm never going to predict 28 touches for running back. I'm just not that type of guy. But 21 plus, 21 and a half, if you set that at the over-under for total touches for Jonathan Taylor in week 3, I'm assuming that the vast majority of you would take the over. And if we're getting that on FanDuel, including the inside the 5 touches, including all the data that shows us play home favored running backs that are going to get a high volume share and all of the high leverage targets inside the 5, 6,700 is nowhere close to being enough. This needs to be 7,500 minimum. He is underpriced by at least 800 and probably 1,200. So yeah, I'm going with Derrick Henry, his goal line shares against Minnesota, who's been torched by opposing running backs. Jonathan Taylor against the Jets, who are an absolute mess at 6,700, leaving me a couple of more slots to choose from. In 5,400, I said I wanted to stack up from this Dallas and Seattle game. So DK Metcalf is pretty good. I mean, I put him on the thumbnail. I kind of have to use him. 6 targets, 8 targets, caught 4 of them for a touchdown in both games. Challenged for that 100-yard game both times. Not a factor on FD, but led the league in terms of end zone targets. We want guys that are going to have touchdown upside. This game has the highest total. Seattle is playing up in pace. Metcalf has big splash, has floor, has touchdown upside. I'm going to plug him in. That leaves me a little bit less. CeeDee Lamb has been outstanding through a couple of weeks, at least in terms of his volume. 6 targets in the first game against the Rams, 9 targets against Atlanta. Now we get to see him against Seattle, who is not exactly stopped anybody, especially not in the slot, with Julian Edelman getting his career high in yardage against them last week, coming from Cam Newton and not Tom Brady, which on top of that was surprising. And he's only 5,600. He does carry with him some touchdown upside, but the floor is tremendous, as if I can get 10 plus points out of CeeDee Lamb at 5,600 from just volume alone and still have the touchdown upside from that game, that leaves us 4,200 for defense. That's more than enough. That's more than I need. You can plug in any defense you want and still have money left over. Kyler Murray, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Hopkins paired with Murray, DK Metcalf paired with CeeDee Lamb as our secondary stack, TJ Hawkinson bringing it back in our primary stack, and Kenyon Drake on top of it with his 20 touches. This same lineup on DraftKings in week 3 is 6,500 over the cap over there on DK. You can do whatever you want on FanDuel in week 3. Have fun and check out another video right there.
He's a legend.